Seeing at 6 p.m., I'd like to call the May 15, 2024 regular meeting of the Kenai City Council to order and ask if you are able, would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome, everybody. Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gabriel?
Here.
Councilmember Askin?
Here.
Councilmember Dothett?
Here.
Councilmember Baisden is not here. Councilmember Sonart?
Here.
Vice Mayor Naxted?
Here.
Councilmember Daniel?
Here.
Student Representative Tanner?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Council. Before we get to the action approval, I'd like to call to your attention a laydown you should have in front of you with requested additions to the packet. Action, add to item E6, ordinance number 34116-2024, Beautification Committee Recommendation Amendment, and Council on Aging requested amendment requested by the City Clerk. Action, add to item E7, ordinance number 3417-2024, public comment requested by the City Clerk. And action, add item P1, Peninsula Orders Funding Request Letter requested by administration, as well as add item P2, KPB Comprehensive Safety Action Plan Virtual Public Workshop requested by the City Clerk, and you'll find those both under the informational items in your packet. Pleasure, Council. Vice Mayor Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I move for approval of the agenda and the consent agenda with the add items E6, E7, P1, and P2, and request unanimous consent.
Second.
Is there anybody from the body that'd like to amend the agenda or consent agenda at this time? Seeing none, I'll turn to the clerk and ask that she read the consent agenda into the record.
Sorry, didn't find my page. Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Approval of the regular meeting minutes of May 1st, 2024, brought to you by the City Clerk. New business action approval, bills to be ratified, brought to you by the administration. Action approval, purchase orders and purchase order amendments requiring council approval in accordance with KMC 7.15.020, brought to you by the administration. Action approval, second extension to the agreement with Redline Sports for management services at the Kenai Multipurpose Facility, brought to you by the administration. Introduction of ordinance number 3418-2024, adopting the annual budget, salary schedule, and employee classification plan for fiscal year commencing July 1st, 2024, and ending June 30th, 2025, and committing $4,499,039 of general fund balance for future capital improvements. Brought to you by the administration. Public hearing scheduled for June 5th, 2024. Introduction of ordinance 3419-2024, amending sections of Kenai Municipal Code, Title 23, Personnel Regulations, Section 23.05.070, Definitions, 23.25.070, Acting Positions, 23.30.030, Probationary Period for Employees in the Classified Services, 23.30.110, travel expenses, 23.40.040, terminal leave, 23.55.020, compensation structure by grade for employees in the classified service, 23.55.030, qualifications pay, and 23.55.080, longevity pay for employees in the classified service to ensure appropriate compensation and benefits to city employees comparable to other places of public employment, improving recruitment and retention of qualified employees. Brought to you by the administration. Public hearing scheduled for June 5th, 2024. And introduction of ordinance number 3420-2024, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the general fund and municipal roadway improvement capital fund, and awarding a construction agreement and corresponding purchase order for the 2024 Lilac Lane roadway improvement project. Brought to you by the administration. Public hearing on June 5th, 2024, and that is your consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Is there anybody from the general public who'd like to comment on the consent agenda, which was just read into the record by the clerk? Seeing no one in person or online, we'll bring it back to council. Unanimous consent was requested for both the consent agenda and the regular agenda. Is there any objection? Seeing none, both are approved. Tonight, we have no scheduled administrative reports. We have no scheduled public comments, which brings us to unscheduled public comments. Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to address the council at this time that on any item that is not on the agenda or consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll close unscheduled public comments and move to public hearings. First up, we have item E1, ordinance number 3412-2024, accepting and appropriating grant funds from the Alaska High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area for drug investigation overtime expenditures. Pleasure, council. Vice Mayor Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to enact ordinance 3412-2024.
I'll second it.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3412-2024? Seeing nobody in chambers or online, we'll bring it back to council. Deliberation, comments from council. Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Askin,
Yes.
Councilmember Dothit,
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Naxted,
Yes?
Councilmember Daniel,
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Student Representative Tanner.
Yes.
You have 6 yes vote, 1 absent. Ordinance number 3412-2024 is enacted.
Thank you. Next up, we have item E2, ordinance number 3413-2024, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the general fund police department and accepting a grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation passed through the State of Alaska Department of Transportation and Public Facilities for traffic enforcement overtime expenditures. Pleasure, council. Vice Mayor Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to enact ordinance 3413-2024.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance number 3413-2024? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments from council? Vice Mayor Naxton.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Not so much a comment on the ordinance, or the one before for that matter, but we get a lot of these grants through the police department, and I was wondering if, since the chief is here, or maybe there's somebody else more appropriate, just how that process works. If there's one person that is asking for these grants at the police department, how do they come about?
Chief Ross, through the city manager.
Vice Mayor through the city manager. Boy, there's a whole combination of them. Many of them have been ongoing for many years as a source of funding. At the police department, we handle them through a number of supervisors that handle the different grant processes. Some are new applications every year and some are just ongoing depending on the nature of them. The Alaska Highway Safety one, the second one, or the one that's before you now, is an annual one, but we have to apply for different periods of it. And the HIDA one is just ongoing year to year, the previous one. I don't know if that answered your question.
It does. I didn't know if one person was doing this and we should thank them or just thank the whole department. It sounds like it's the whole department.
Yes, sir, it's definitely a group effort.
Further comments? I'd like to echo that. Yeah, thanks, Chief, for all the way. We did one for ballistic vests, I think, recently as well. So thanks for the work on that. Seeing no other deliberation or comments, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Dothit,
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Naxted,
Yes?
Councilmember Daniel,
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Councilmember Askin,
Yes.
Student Representative Tanner.
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes, 1 absent. Ordinance number 3413-2024 is enacted.
Thank you. Next up, we have ordinance number 3414-2024, repealing Kenai Municipal Code Sections 13.10.010A2, miscellaneous offenses, 13.010.020, loitering and sleeping on the streets, schools, and school, and 13.10.030, curfew to remove certain city prohibitions regarding begging, loitering, and sleeping, and curfews in the city that are not enforceable as specifically written in code. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Naxton, or Vice Mayor Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor. Both work. I move to enact ordinance 3414-2024.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3414-2024? Seeing nobody in chambers or online, bring it back to council, deliberation. I think we'll probably ask administration to give us a little, it's probably what you're asking, curiosity, I think, and to inform the public. So can you give us a little overview Mr. Eubank?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to ask Chief Ross. He worked with the city attorney on putting this together.
Chief Ross?
Mayor, through the city manager, this is something that the city attorney and I have talked about for some time and gone over the fact that these sections of code are not enforceable as they are. They are all problematic. Some of them could be changed to where they were enforceable if portions of them were gotten rid of and things added to them. And in our discussion, we thought it would probably be better to, instead of speculating what we might need to change them to someday, that we just remove them from code at this point, and then if we found a reason for them in the future, then we could come up with a appropriate ordinance at that time. I don't know if you'd like me to speak to the particular parts of this or just that general overview.
Yeah, maybe just an overview of I think there's sort of 3 or 4 elements to this, but some are somewhat problematic as far as enforcing, I think, as what recalls.
Sure.
We might be violating folks' civil rights, things like that, so.
Sorry. Sure, Mayor, through the city manager. So the first portion of this is to remove the section that is begging. Our code says prohibits begging in any street, alley, place of business, or other public place. The very act of asking people for assistance or asking people for charity, I think the courts have pretty well ruled is not something we can outlaw. There's cities that outlaw some portion or some idea of begging, like we could change it to something like aggressive begging. There's cities that have done that, and they've very well defined what aggressive begging is. But as our code is written, just the act of begging, we can't outlaw people asking for money. So it's not appropriate the way it's written. The next section that addresses is loitering. Our section says, I'll just read part of it, to loiter or wander aimlessly within the city streets. So, that's problematic just in the way it's written, just wandering aimlessly among the city streets. We can't just outlaw that. That's probably half the citizens that go for a walk are wandering aimlessly. So, if we wanted to address loitering or those things, then we need to adjust this ordinance to fit a standard that we could enforce, that wasn't just, if the common citizen will look at the ordinance and say, yeah, am I violating it, then it's not meeting a standard that the court would uphold. The third section is the curfew. So a good standard for the curfew, the Supreme Court upheld the City of Anchorage's curfew law, I think in 2004, the state Supreme Court. And they went section by section to discuss what it needed in it, and ours does not meet that standard. It needs to have exceptions for a number of things. Ours has an emergency exception. It's not well defined. It needs to have an exception for First Amendment rights to go to religious things and political things. It needs to have a couple other exceptions. And the other thing they addressed in that decision in Anchorage was that it needs to have some statistical kind of foundation. Why do we need to rein in people's rights, children's rights? Is there a public interest in that? Is there a governmental interest? And I'm not sure to rewrite the ordinance if we have that, some statistical basis in Kenai to suggest there's this high level of crime by juveniles during those hours of the night. So some of these could be rewritten, but as they are, they just don't meet a good legal standard. And so for us to enforce them as they are could be problematic for our enforcement officers and problematic for the city. So that was the intent behind this, and I guess I'll ask if Scott wants to add anything because he worked with me on this.
Thank you. Mr. Bloom?
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel, members of council. The only thing I'd add, and I'd like Dave to expound a little bit on, is that my understanding is that in his opinion, he doesn't think that repealing any of these sections will affect the police department's ability to protect public health and safety.
Chief Ross?
Through the mayor. So yeah, we did discuss that as well. I think most of the time that things related to this come up, trespassing or other state statutes fit. Disorderly conduct, if you're in the road impeding with traffic and things like that, then there's other statutes that fit. If you're on private property doing things that they don't want on private property, if you're annoying customers by begging on private property, the private property owner can have the people trespass for violating their rules. So most of the issues that have come up around this can be dealt with in other ways under state statutes.
Very good, thank you. Councilmember Dawson.
I guess my biggest concern is that I could see some of these coming up as issues in the future. Is there a way, should we be rewriting them now and put them on the books to where they would be enforceable now before we just repeal something completely? Or would it do something where we can repeal this and then work on something now so they're not coming in after the fact? Now that we have an issue, now we need to write something up. I know that would, like with the curfew specifically, I do appreciate the city having a curfew for children. If they sneak out at night, it gives a reason for the police officers to stop and be like, hey, what are you doing out here? We have a curfew to contact them, that kind of thing. I personally would like to see something, possibly, if it's possible to see some of these being rewritten. If it is, in fact, where they are now, just repealing them, but I would like to see something possibly working on the books to make some of these things enforceable. I don't know, like with the begging or loitering, is there something, and there might be something about in the city streets or something where it's a safety protocol, or would that fall into some other category? I guess with loitering, I guess would be my first question. As far as, I'm just concerned about people in the city streets if they start walking down the streets, or would that be something else?
Chief Ross.
Councilor Dothett, through the mayor, I think if you're impeding traffic or violating other things, I don't think that's an issue. We can address that. If you just mean out walking, then no, I don't think we have a good way to address just out walking. If you're incredibly young, we can certainly contact people at night and get a hold of parents. Probably the questionable area is when you don't look 12 years old, you look 16 years old. But our curfew is under 16 and is written in code. I would also point out, I did a little bit of research, and we are the only municipality left on the peninsula, I think, that has a curfew. Seward repealed theirs years ago. Homer repealed theirs years ago. I couldn't find one in the city of Soldotna. So there's not one outside the cities, and there's not one in any other city on the peninsula, which isn't the same as it looked like there was one in Anchorage, there was one in Palmer, there was one in Wasilla, and I think there is one in Fairbanks. So they do exist in depending on where you're at.
And I guess go back to the first. So by repealing these, would it be something we might be able to look at in the near future to see if there is some way to make like a curfew? If we wanted to come up with an idea, if we could come up with an idea and write it accordingly, would curfew be something we could come back with and revisit after this is repealed?
I think, sorry, Councilor Dothett, through the mayor, I think if it were the will of council, we could certainly keep a curfew. I think we just need to model it after, like Anchorage's that passed the Supreme Court ruling and make sure it has all those caveats in it. There are lots of cities that have curfews, and we could make a legal one if that was the desire of the council.
Okay. Thank you.
Further discussion?
I can just
Mr. Bloom.
Thank you. And I would just like to add, one of the reasons that we're not, Chief Ross and I, when we discuss this, aren't in favor of doing something right now is, for example, like prohibiting sleeping on public property. Right now, the U.S. Supreme Court has some cases under advisement, and we'd like to see how that ruling comes out before we make our change, because that would certainly apply to us, because it's dealing with federal constitutional rights that would apply to us. Also, like with begging, I just don't think that we have a problem. If we have a problem that comes up, let's address it, and then I think we can be more specific in how we define the actions that we're trying to prohibit in the city. So we're not seeing the problems that these code sections were intended to address. I don't think, Dave's patrol officers and the members of the public, we're not getting complaints about these issues. If we start to get them, or if council desires to, go forward, then we can do a better job and be more specific as to what types of acts we want to prohibit in the city.
Thank you.
Councilmember Dawson?
I worry about being reactive instead of proactive on some of these things. And that's my biggest concern. If we strip them off the books completely, even sometimes by just having it out there that, there is some kind of an ordinance that says you can't do some sort of begging or loitering before we have the issue. And then we have to, it takes a couple months or longer to get it on the books and get it written up, and then we still have that issue. That's my only fear on that, is that reactiveness instead of proactiveness on that. And I would like to see some kind of a curfew. I think it's a good thing to have on there. If anything, it's just a good thing to be able to warn your children that, no, you can't stay out this late, because it's not only my rules, but it's also the actual rules of the law and stuff like that. So I think the curfew is the biggest one that sticks in mind. And then just as we see federal law coming in and changing and coming about, possibly being a little bit proactive on it and putting it back on the books once we see those case law come about. But thanks.
Further discussion? Go ahead, Councilmember Daniel.
For Chief Ross, just curious, we have a busy summer season with campers and whatnot, especially around dip netting. With the way things are written now, if somebody, there's a hypothetical, somebody was camping at the ball fields or camping City Hall, just camping somewhere, and then if we repealed these, is there a mechanism if there's somebody camping somewhere not supposed to still fix that situation, or are we, going to have a problem with that?
Chief Ross?
Counselor Daniel, through the mayor. So overnight camping is a separate section of statute, and it's prohibited in the city under KMC, I think 18. In fact, I know it's 18 because I have it in front of me. So this is nothing to repeal the camping section of the KMC.
That's interesting. So how do we define sleeping versus camping? Just that they're sleeping out in the open? I'm just curious now. It's interesting. I didn't know that.
Chief Ross?
Well, the section specifically refers to overnight camping, the camping section. So I don't necessarily believe it deals with if you fall asleep in the park or on the beach or whatever. It just deals with overnight camping.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor Nexon.
Like Councilmember Doth, that I guess I had some concerns at first when I read through this, and however, it's written, it's very archaic the way it's written, and it's problematic. And sometimes when you're trying to fix something that's written like that, it's kind of difficult. So I do support the idea of removing it and then adding back something later if we need to. And from what I've gathered from our police department and our attorney, that there's nothing that really needs that attention right now. Maybe a council member might have something they want to do. The curfew thing, I thought that was the most archaic, frankly. I didn't see a need for that. And that could be a future debate, but I would think that if there's a group of teenagers, even if they're 17, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, that they might get contacted by the police, depending, as normal course anyway. So they're aware of that. And but as far as sleeping, a lot of this is you know what you want when you see it, but there's all these unwanted consequences that can come with that. Now, in college, I'm sure I slept in the library a couple of times. I took a nap because you're wore out and all that, and maybe in high school, just briefly. But I took a Z, so I was so that would be illegal. It's in a public place under this, so I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense. But we all agree with that. But however, that's what this technically says. So if somebody can come up with something better that fits that thing that we recognize as the problem, then maybe we ought to talk about that. But I think that it's fine to let this slip off the code books.
Further discussion? Yeah, I guess I would wait. My point was it's kind of I think I sort of shared concerns of my other council members up here is that we're getting a repeal, but sort of nothing backfilling the void of what that leaves behind. And but I like your analogy of, hey, if you're going to arrest people for loitering or wandering aimlessly through the city, there would be people that honestly, same thing, that are going on a walk that may not have a destination or just sort of out there walking. So, and I think now most of the term, as far as begging, I think the term used for most city ordinance, maybe I'm wrong, is panhandling. It seems to me that's a different, although I think it's generally the same thing. So, if you're, as far as coming up with this, I'm okay, I guess, with the strategy of sort of wait and see if there's something better we can do or more complete at a time when we sort of recognize what those are that won't violate federal law. And but I would like to keep that in the forefront at some point, in my opinion, although I'm okay with repealing this, is to think about things that unintended consequences that future administrations, police chiefs might have to deal with, and maybe get something on the books to offer them some level of confidence that they can enforce the law in the city of Kenai. I guess that would be my point. So, further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Sonart,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Nakstad,
Yes?
Councilmember Daniel,
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Councilmember Askin,
Yes.
Councilmember Dothit,
Yes.
Student Representative Tanner.
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes, 1 absent. Ordinance number 3414, 2024 is enacted.
Thank you. Council, we're on item E4, ordinance number 3415-2024, authorizing a donation of surplus sand from the Kenai Municipal Airport to Triumvirate Theater for the construction of a new theater. Pleasure, Council. Vice Mayor Nexon.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to enact ordinance 3415, 2024.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public like to speak to ordinance number 3415-2024? Mr. Rizzo. And just say if you're a resident of the city of Kenai for the record, please.
Yes, Joe Rizzo, Triumvirate Theater, PO Box 322, Kenai, Alaska. First of all, I'd just like to say that I'm grateful that begging is not against the law, because there would have to be I'm afraid our chief would have a warrant out for my arrest for the last 3 years. I want to really thank you all for all of your great support over these last 3.5 years of trying to put this performing arts center. I'm very pleased to tell you that the trees have been cleared, and we are just waiting for construction permits and to come through, and they are ready to roll. This sand donation is actually, for a little organization like Triumvirate Theater, is a kind of a big deal. It saves us, in the neighborhood of $14,000-15,000, which doesn't seem like a lot on a project that's a $3.5 million building, but for Triumvirate Theater, $15,000 is the lobby furniture. So I'm grateful for all your support. I'm also thankful to Mr. Eubank for suggesting it in the first place, and all of his great ideas that he's given me, and the support of Linda over in planning. So if you have any questions about how you can donate to Triumvirate Theater, you can just give me a call. You all have my cell phone number. So thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Rizzo? Vice Mayor
Thank you.
Nexon.
I just want to say that I'm glad you don't have a big hole in the ground waiting for the sand that you've been waiting for. So it sounds like we're on, good timing here.
We got good timing.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance 3415-2024? Seeing nobody else in chamber or online, we'll bring it back to council. Comments from council. Vice Mayor Nexon.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I've got an amendment to make. I move to amend ordinance number 3415, 2024 by filling in the blank of the 10th whereas clause with the word recommended. The whereas clause will read, at its meeting on May 9th, 2024, the City of Kenai Airport Commission recommended enactment of this ordinance and request unanimous consent.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, that motion is approved, or the amendment is approved, and we have ordinance number 3415-2024 as amended before us. Further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Nexted,
Yes?
Councilmember Daniel,
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel,
Yes.
Councilmember Askin,
Yes.
Councilmember Dothit,
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart,
Yes.
Student Representative Tanner.
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes, 1 absent. Ordinance number 3415-2024 is enacted.
Thank you. Next up, we have ordinance number 3416-2024, repealing, reenacting, and renaming the Kenai Municipal Code, Chapter 1.90, Standard Procedures for Boards, Commissions, and Committees, enacting Chapter 1.95, Standing Advisory Commissions, repealing Chapters 11.10, Harbor Commission, Chapter 19.05, Parks and Recreation Commission, Chapter 21.20, Airport Commission, enacting Sections 14.05.050, Planning and Zoning Commission, qualifications and membership, and approving amendments to the Council on Aging Commission's bylaws to organize, streamline, and improve the efficiency of the city's standing commissions. And I will note that in our pack, there is a substitute ordinance listed under here as well. Pleasure, Council. Vice Mayor Nexon.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to enact ordinance 3416, 2024.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to ordinance number 3416-2024 and also say that it would be an appropriate time to speak to the substitute as well? Seeing nobody in chambers or online, we'll bring it back to council. Vice Mayor Nexon.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to amend ordinance number 3416, 2024 by substitute ordinance 3416, 2024. Request unanimous consent.
Second.
Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, we have now have ordinance number 3416-2024 substitute before us. Vice Mayor Nexon.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to amend substitute ordinance number 3416, 2024 by filling in the blanks of the 11th whereas clause with the date May 14th and the word enact. The whereas clause will read, the Beautification Committee at their May 14th, 2024 regular meeting recommended that the City Council enact this ordinance and request unanimous consent.
Second.
Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the motion is, the amendment is approved. Further discussion, Vice Mayor Nexon.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm on a roll. I move to amend substitute ordinance 3416, 2024, Section 2 of the ordinance, Chapter 1.95, Standing Advisory Commissions, Section 1.95.030, Council on Aging Commission, paragraph B1 II, to delete from the sentence excluding Vintage Point Independent Senior Housing. The amendment paragraph would read, the development and use of the senior center or other facilities owned or managed by the city for the provision of services for senior citizens.
I'll second.
Request unanimous consent.
Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the amendment is approved. We have substitute ordinance 3416-2024 is amended before us. Further discussion? I would, oh, go ahead, Vice Mayor Nexon.
Well, not about the ordinance specifically, but this all came about by our clerk and some others putting in a lot of time and effort to get this out to all of the different commissions and all of the individuals in multiple meetings and all of that. So I'm going to thank the clerk, but I think that there's probably others to thank, but the city attorney too. But thanks. Maybe the clerk can tell me who to thank, but it seems to me that our clerk was kind of front and center on most of this. And you know, if there was any risk or whatever, I mean, it all came back to her, and she took care of it and came back, all that, you know what I mean? It's just, things can go kind of, when you do something new like this. And I think that it did benefit our commissions quite a bit from the, from what I've heard from those individuals. So I appreciate the work.
Further discussion? Yeah, oh, go ahead. Oh.
I was going to say more
Councilmember,
of
yeah.
a brief overview for everyone would be nice. It's a big one, so sorry.
That's
It'd
okay,
be worth
thank you.
it.
I was making notes prepared. So,
Ms. Sainer?
just to give a brief summary, so last fall, this process began when the council approved a review of boards, commissions, and committees, which started off with a survey going out to all commission members in November. Then in January, the city manager, attorney, and I met with all the commissions, went over their survey results, their existing code, and the code with general standards for boards and commissions. Then we took back their recommendations in February, and most commissions, I think some of them didn't get to approve them until March, but they approved the recommendations. And part of the recommendations involved codifying the Council on Aging and Beautification Committee for the first time, which made us step back and take a bigger look at the structure of our code. And that's when, with the attorney's opinion included, we decided it would be best to repeal 190 and rewrite it so it stood only to advisory commissions and enact a new section 1405050 that the parts of 190 that applied to Planning and Zoning Commission were now moved over to the Planning Code, and enact a new chapter 195, standing advisory commissions. Within that, each had sections for each standing advisory commission, and then repealed from code the sections that already existed for advisories, airport, harbor, parks and recreation, so that all of our advisory commission information is pretty much in one place in code instead of having to bounce from chapter to chapter. Any further questions? Did that give you a 10,000-foot view?
Further discussion?
Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to just say, I know, you know, you put a lot of work into this, Shelley, as well as other staff members, and it was a long process, but I think it was a process that was overdue and meaningful, and hopefully the commissions will see that moving forward. And I see we even, in our action approval, we have some work plans that are on our agenda that are a result of this, you know, work that was done. So certainly appreciate that, and I think the Beautification Committee will now like to be referred to as the Beautification Commission.
I can say they're very excited about being the Beautification Commission now.
Yes. Seeing no further deliberation, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Daniel?
Yes.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Councilmember Askin?
Yes.
Councilmember Dothett?
Yes.
Councilmember Sonert?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Naxtat?
Yes?
Student Representative Tanner?
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes, 1 absent. Ordinance, sorry, I lost the number.
Substitute.
3416-2024 is enacted.
Substitute ordinance? Yeah, thank you. Next up, we're on item E6, ordinance number 3417-2024, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations by $12,600 in the general fund for the purchase of approximately 7.8 acres of real property described as Tract B, Kenai Bluff Stabilization Subdivision, from David W. Salter to be retained by the city for a public purpose, and determining that the public interest will not be served by an appraisal. Pleasure, Council. Vice Mayor Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to enact ordinance 3417-2024.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance number 3417-2024? Seeing nobody in chambers or online, we'll bring it back to council. Vice Mayor Nixon.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. First off, I'd move to amend ordinance 3417-2024 by filling in the blank of the 8th whereas clause with the word enactment. The whereas clause would read, at its meeting on May 6th, 2024, the Harbor Commission recommended enactment of this ordinance and request unanimous consent.
Second.
Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, the amendment is approved. We now have ordinance number 3417-2024 as amended before us, and we'll note as well that Ms. Cornelius has submitted public comment, which is in our laydown for tonight's meeting. Further discussion. I guess, could you just give us a little overview of this, Mr. Eubank?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. So the city was approached by a local real estate agent representing the owner of the parcel, Mr. Salter. Mr. Salter purchased a house up on Toyon Way. He desired to do some erosion control down on the beach in front of his property. He reached out to the prior owner of this parcel seeking an easement in order to go down there and do those improvements, and the prior owner was not receptive to allowing people or giving easements for that type of work on his property. Alternatively, Mr. Salter made an offer, purchased a piece of property, then did whatever improvements that he wanted. He also permitted adjacent property owners. Actually, he offered to anybody, I believe, in the entire strip there on Toyon Way, the ability to do the same. I think he was seeking some amount of monetary compensation to recover some of his costs in purchasing the land. There were 3 or 4 other parcel owners that took Mr. Salter up on that and constructed some erosion control devices. Mr. Salter now is selling his house up on Toyon Way and is not interested in owning this parcel longer. So they've approached the city about the city taking ownership of it. They've offered a purchase price of $12,000. I believe, and help me, Mr. Bloom, it's a couple $100 more than what the borough assessment is on this property. So I think a very reasonable offer as far as the purchase price. You know, from the city's perspective, here's a couple things I think that acquiring the property where it's a public benefit and a benefit to the city. You know, this property is, some of this land is still on the top end of the bluff behind some of these houses. Not much. There would likely be some places that some of this land is actually on the upland side of the bluff, but the majority of it is down at the toe of the bluff and extends out. You know, theoretically, somebody could go down there, the owner of this property could go down there and fence off that area of the beach and prohibit public access or public, you know, moving back and forth through there. So I think, you know, this allows us to make sure that that public access is not impeded. It would give the city the ability to approve the erosion control structures that people want to build down there, what they look like and how big they are, where they're located, how, you know, how far out into the beach they come. You know, there's some environmentally sensitive areas of grassland and dunes and that on the eastern end of this parcel over by where the stairs come down at the end of South Forest. And next to the city's wastewater treatment plant. This could provide expansion, land for expansion, potential expansion of that wastewater treatment plant if it was ever needed. Certainly not needed now, but that could become an issue at some point for the city. So there's just a number of reasons we thought that, you know, it made most sense for the city to try to acquire this piece of property. And, you know, I think it also gives us the ability to work with the other property owners along Toyon Way and give additional easements and things for them to erect erosion control structures. So that's why we brought it forward. Because the purchase price is so low, we did not feel an appraisal was prudent. I mean, it likely would be close to half the cost of the purchase price anyways, just to get an appraisal. So, and I'm happy to try to answer any other questions.
Questions, the city manager, Councilmember Dothett?
That was just, you answered it a little bit, but basically I was just concerned about the existing property owners that have got, already did the bluff stabilization. Will they be able to access their current project to do maintenance and that kind of thing, or will they have to get a permit to be able to maintain what they've already got?
Mr. Vane?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Dodd, great question. One condition of the cities, of us moving forward with the purchase was the recording of easements for those individuals, which allows them to access the property to maintain those structures that they've constructed. They're not allowed to expand them without further approval, but it does give them the right to access what's already been constructed there.
Thank you.
Further discussion, Vice Mayor Naxton?
Yeah, thank you. I've been eyeing this for some time, this property down there, and I think it's great that the city's able to acquire it now. And it looks like there's up to maybe more 11 properties that would specifically benefit from this. And like was mentioned, there is some existing infrastructure down there that has been built, I guess, by individuals, and there'll be more. And I guess just a question for the attorney perhaps has to do with existing or future, what if there's any liability specifically that the city might be taking on, or is the easement that you have written pretty well protect the city from that? Bluff erosion is always kind of temporary.
Mr. Bloom?
Thank you, Councilmember Nexted, through the mayor. You know, is there any liability that we're taking on? I think we're always taking on some liability. What the existing structures that are on the property right now are pretty simple. It's just some old oil pipe, I think, that's driven into the beach. And, you know, we weren't in control of the property when those were put in, and while we were allowed to review the easement and provide some input, you know, it was a agreement between private property owners and not the city. I don't think what's there right now is a big deal. I think we will, if more significant structures are proposed in the future, I think it is something we're going to have to take a little closer look at. You know, there'll be issues that they'll have to come before the council to grant further easements. And so council can weigh in on what we think. I mean, I think it's pretty commonly known that whenever you change one part of a, you know, bluff or riverbank or something like that, it has upstream and downstream effects often, and that's something we'll have to take into consideration and look at moving forward.
Further discussion? Just before we take the vote, I'd just like to say that I am in support of this. I think for all the reasons outlined there, that folks there, especially property owners, is not only the ones that have done the work, but probably are considering doing work down, that this is probably eases their mind a little bit, that they can actually design a project and be able to have access to the project site to get the work done, and not have to be held hostage, or I'd say a bad term, but be at someone else's mercy, I guess, to be able to do that, to protect their own property. So I think this is a wise move on by the city of Kenai on behalf of the residents of that neighborhood. Seeing no other discussion, clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Gabriel?
Yes.
Councilmember Askin?
Yes.
Councilmember Dothett?
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Naxted?
Yes?
Councilmember Daniel?
Yes.
Student Representative Tanner?
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes. Ordinance number 3417, 2024, as amended, is enacted.
Thank you. Next up, we have resolution number 2024-16, authorizing a budget transfer within the Water and Sewer Capital Project Fund for lift station renovation project. Pleasure, council. Vice Mayor Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt resolution 2024-16.
I'll second.
Anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to resolution number 2024-16? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the body. Discussion. Vice Mayor Nexon?
If we could hear from administration on how this is working.
Mr. Ebank?
By the way, I'm surprised how many lift stations we have in the city. I didn't realize we had nearly that many.
Mr. Ebank?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Public Works Director Curtin's here. I'll have him speak to this.
Mr. Curtin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through City Manager Eubanks. So this is a project that we've been designing with HDL Engineering over the course of the last year. We actually started with 3 different lift stations, and this is really our first effort in trying to update them. You know, some of these are approaching 50 years old now and have had very limited renovation work done to them. So we've got 2 sites. One's milepost 13 and 14, so that's the one by the soccer field, and then the other one that's on the corner of the Spur Highway and Redoubt Avenue. Those are the 2 there. And then we had a third one on Lawton Avenue near Walker. Those are the 3 that we currently have completed design documents in hand for. My original intentions, based on our needs and the level of urgency that we had with this, I was hoping to just replace the pumps and some controllers to get some reliability put back into these. These things have had regular failures. Each location has 2 pumps, so we always have a backup. And a lot of our backups were failing, which was leaving us with only 1 operational, which is very stressful if you're a water and sewer operator. As we got into this, just being able to release, to replace the pumps is not a simple thing. So everything in those lift stations is aging, so everything it touches becomes more complicated. So trying to put a new pump down older pump rails, for example, and then using all the other components that go into a lift station. So without building a whole new lift station, we started looking at all the other components that are really necessary to update and modernize this. So that scope of work has grown. So this resolution is moving some funds from 2 of those sites to allow us to move forward with 1. We're going to test the waters and see how this goes, make sure everything works out as we intend to. But that will give me 1 updated, modernized, and functioning lift station. And the components that are going to come out of that, we're going to keep as spares. To allow us to continue to service our older units. We'll still be able to utilize some of those components, which is much needed as well. And if, assuming that this goes well and everything gets done, I'll have additional legislation coming back to council, and we will be reassessing those other 2 locations and getting additional funds to do those basically through the same way. So. Long story short, I was originally hoping to be able to do these 3 locations for about $400,000. That's not going to be the case. Doing these 3 sites now, we're probably getting closer to $900,000 to $1 million to do all 3. We're doing much more work, and the repairs that we're doing are much longer term than what we were originally planning on doing. Happy to answer any other questions.
Vice Mayor Nexon?
If you don't mind, it's actually kind of it's a money thing. I mean, not everybody's interested in sewage lift stations. I kind of am, but the cost of maintaining, you got 19 lift stations in the city, and we're talking about 3 here. The cost is, if you give us some ideas of the cost and what you're looking at saving in costs as far as maintenance by this program, if you have any kind of general idea.
Mr. Curtin?
No, it's a great question. So we have a staff of 7 individuals. We work 7 days a week. So I have operators that work shifts on Saturday and Sunday as well. They respond to emergencies on a regular basis. So we get calls out. If a station gets clogged up, stops working, we respond. We have to go. We can't wait. It's hard for me to give you an exact number. I can tell you that we specifically chose these 3 stations because of the urgency we've had with them and how many homes actually feed into them. The one on Redoubt, for example, currently has 1 pump that's not working. So we're right now living on 1 pump. So if that pump fails, I have to mobilize, and we're kind of on a clock to start that one back up again. So the level of urgency and just trying to minimize impacts. I'll be honest with you, I mean, we've been really fortunate as a community based on the age of some of these that I hate to say we're just lucky, but we've really, we've got a lot of outdated infrastructure that is, beyond its useful life, and it continues to work. And it's, it's just not it's not a good way to run a utility. So I think this is a first step. It's a minimal effort to start really updating and taking some of the stress and the pressure off of operations. My intentions are to continue as we can afford. I mean, these are, citywide, these are almost all 50 years old. I think over time, we're going to touch every one of these. It's just a matter of how many are we going to do a year, and it might be 10 years before we get to the end. But my intentions are to do them all. So, and you'll see that more to come throughout updates to the capital improvement plan. Thank you.
Councilmember Dalton?
Just for my knowledge, these are the lift stations where you see occasionally when they're working, they have the light that comes on and flashes. That indicating there's an issue with it, I'm assuming?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. I see you guys that read out a lot, so
Yes.
that makes sense. Yeah.
Well, ironically, not to share any more good news, but a lot of those red lights actually don't even work anymore. So so it's nice when they do work, but we have many of them that don't work. And as many of you know, we've talked about SCADA throughout the years, and we've had ongoing issues with our SCADA system. So we don't have very good alarms as it works to that. So when you talk about cost savings of what's coming, we do multiple trips a day to almost every lift station to put physical eyes on every one of those locations to make sure we're not having problems. That's not how most people run a utility. Most people have automated controls that would tell you if you were having a problem. You would get an alarm on your phone or computer that would tell you what's going on. We don't have that at all of our locations. We're going to. We just don't have it today. So.
Councilmember Dalton?
Well, thank you for the heads up, and, thank you for looking out to the future that we've got to start budgeting and thinking about these big expenses we have. So, thank you.
Further discussion?
Request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested for resolution number 2024-16. Is there any objection? Seeing none, that resolution is adopted. Next up, we have item E8. Excuse me. Resolution number 2024-17, renaming Cook Inlet View Drive to Cook Inlet Drive. Pleasure, council. Councilmember Dalton. Or Sonar, I'm sorry.
I move to adopt resolution number 2024-17.
Second.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to resolution number 2024-17? See nobody here and online. I think the hope is that we refer this to planning and zoning. Is that correct? So a motion to refer. Councilmember Sonar.
I'd like to make a motion to refer resolution number 2024-17 to planning and zoning for their recommendation.
Would that be at their next meeting? At their next meeting?
At their next meeting, May 22nd.
Thank you. Second, discussion on the motion.
Request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was
I'd
requested.
like to amend the motion if I could.
Go ahead. Go.
Is it acceptable that?
You can offer an amendment, or you can offer the second motion to postpone.
I don't think I heard all of that, but some of the notes I have here is to postpone it until our June 5th meeting to come back to council. Would that be amendment to your, so it would go to planning and zoning, and then that was, and the 5th would be when it comes back? Yes. Is that understood? Yeah.
Okay. So the referral would be to planning and zoning for their May 20.
Thank you. Can I
Mr. Sainer.
clarify? I apologize. The Planning and Zoning Commission meeting is rescheduled for the following Wednesday, which I believe is the 28th. It's not next week, the 29th, so it is on not the 22nd, the 29th. So refer to their meeting of the 29th and postpone till our meeting of June 5th.
Okay, maybe you can restate that, Ms. Sonar, just just for clarity. But I think what we're looking for is referral to their May 29th meeting and then coming back to council for public hearing on June 5th.
Okay. I move to send resolution number 2024-17 to Planning and Zoning on their May 29th meeting, and then to come back to council on Wednesday, June 5th.
Request unanimous consent.
Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, that amendment is approved. And that brings us to item E9, Resolution 2024-18, accepting an airport improvement program grant from the Federal Aviation Administration for an eco-cart. Pleasure, council. Councilmember, or Vice Mayor Naxton.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to adopt Resolution 2024-18.
I'll second.
Is there anybody from the general public that'd like to speak to Resolution 2024-18? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Comments from council, deliberation?
Well, do we want to hear about what an eco-cart is?
Sure, I was waiting for that.
I was waiting
Yep,
for somebody.
Exactly, yep. So I guess, would you like to defer to our airport manager, Mr. Eubank? You want to handle it, take this one? Mr. Eubank, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If Derek would like to take it, he can.
Yeah, thank you. So an eco-cart basically hooks up to the ARF truck and tests the foam that the ARF truck uses to fight the fire. So instead of actually having to spray the foam, it runs through the cart and tests the flow rate and the mixture, so how much foam is going through mixed with water, and that's essentially what it does. So we're not going to have to spray foam or any chemicals. The cart can just do the testing.
And I presume we recapture those for reuse even after that?
So it just circulates it through the system instead of it getting into the environment. Just circulates around.
Sounds like this is like 50 years too late to me, but thank you for your forward thinking, Mr. Evans. Appreciate that. Further discussion on the resolution 2024-18?
Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent was requested. Is there an objection? Seeing none, resolution number 2024-18 is adopted. That brings us to item H7. Thank you for being so patient, Ms. Craig. But so we have before us action approval, Council on Aging 2024 work plan. And I understand that Council on Aging has sent us a representative, and Ms. Craig is here to represent Council on Aging to go over to discuss the work plan. Is that correct? Sure, yeah. That way you may be able to answer any questions anybody may have. Actually, it was in the packet.
I'm assuming you have this as a laydown, correct? Okay, our Council on Aging Commission planned their annual work plan, and they came up with 3 goals for this year, which we all have been assigned tasks at the various goals. And the first one is the community outreach for membership to try and bring more people in. As absolutely wonderful as our senior center is, and those of us that work and participate in the city know that we're there. There are many, many members in Kenai that are living here that don't have the least idea that the senior center is over on the bluff. And we know that there's a lot of seniors out there that could be coming in and using it, even though at the same time our senior numbers are increasing. So as you see, and I'm not going to read this word for word because you folks can do that, but we want to reach out and try and bring more members and make people more aware of who and what we are and what we do. Goal 2 is to discuss and research the need for senior housing in our city of Kenai. I think it's always been kind of a constant for as long as I've lived in Kenai, since 2001. And the numbers for our senior population continues to go up. In fact, I think as the senior population increases, the younger generation is decreasing. Whether they're moving out, whether they're moving to other parts of Alaska, I couldn't answer that. But I do know that there's a real need for senior housing, and there's a real need for senior housing that isn't low income. And so we are hoping that the city would support us in doing the research that's necessary and seeing if we can find a partner to build housing, see if we can get support of the city, and seeing where there may be land available. And we're in the talking stages. And goal 3 is assisting the Kenai Senior Center staff in researching topics that can enrich our senior programs. And something that's near and dear to my heart is intergenerational interaction. I've seen on in the internet, on Facebook, where high schools have taken their voc ed program and developed them so that they could help seniors out in the community, maybe lower income seniors out in the community, to help plow or shovel snow, do light repairs to someone's house, come and clean their yard. That might be something that they could do, or come in and actually volunteer and help one-on-one with a senior that needs companionship. And that's basically what our goals are for the year. And I'm sure that some of these will be extended into the new year as well. But if you have any questions, I'm willing to answer.
Questions of Ms. Craig? Thank you, Rachel. They look like very well stated and organized. Looks like there's a pretty specific plan to, carry those out, facilitate those goals. And I really like the last comment you left, is the intergenerational connection within the community, because I can think as I look around and do some of the beetle kill mitigation on my property, and I think of maybe seniors that could use younger able-bodied people to do that same work, because it is pretty physical. And it's one maybe component that could fit into that, but among many. But certainly appreciate your work on this. Thank you. And we'll note that we do have another Council on Aging member in the audience, our former brethren up here, Mr. Glendenning. So what we have is an action approval, and we're looking to council to approve this plan. Is that right, Ms. Henry? Vice Mayor Maxson?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the Council on Aging 2024 work plan and request unanimous consent.
I'll second that.
Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, unanimous consent was requested. Is there any objection? Seeing none, we have approved the Council on Aging 2024 work plan. Thank you, Ms. Craig, for presenting us that this evening. Next up, we have item H8, action approval, Parks and Recreation Commission 2024 work plan. Pleasure, council.
I move to approve the Parks and Recreation Commission 2024 work plan.
And we'll note that they have, let me pull this up real quick. I think they had, was it 4 or 5? 4, and there was a note, memo from an administration that although they are aligned and support goals 1, 3, and 4, but they do not support goal 2. And when I went through this, was a little curious about how that goal 2 would work, because it seemed like it was a little bit of an overlap with administration. But at any rate, go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Mayor, are you going to put it out to the public?
Yeah.
First? I was going to separate the question
Okay.
after that,
Okay.
so we can discuss that
And we have
separately.
a second on the motion? Do we have a second? Okay, very good. So we have that on the floor. Okay, there we go. So, Vice Mayor
I
Nixon.
move to divide the question to vote on Parks and Recreation Commission objective number 2 separately from objectives 1, 3, and 4.
Thank you. Is there anyone you want to second discussion on that motion? Is that voted on?
Yes, the motion to divide needs to be voted on.
That's what I thought.
Can't
Clerk,
do a quick unanimous consent? You can't.
yeah.
Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent was requested to divide the question. Is there any objection? Seeing none, we will vote on their goal 2 separately from 1, 3, and 4. Discussion on the work plan?
Which,
Would we,
Do you want to, so the question before the council now is either 1, 3, and 4, or question 2, whichever
which one would
order.
you want to take first? Question 2, or goal 2? Okay. Go ahead and make the motion.
thank you. Since I made the motion, I was the temporary liaison when they, Planning and Zoning discussed this, and I brought it back to council, and I talked an awful lot about it because they spent an hour pretty much just talking about this one thing, and they were not completely in agreement. Concerns I had with it were that it was giving direction to the director, amongst some other things, and that the director doesn't work for me, nor the Parks and Rec Commission, and that there could be some pushback. And since the administration does have a memo in there, I think the administration would be most appropriate to speak on that concern at this point.
Mr. Eubank?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Parks and Rec Director Best is here, and I'll let him address this.
Mr. Best?
Okay, in the original goal 2, it was a discussion on keeping a running track log of all like public feedback comments, and like one of the intents of this was asking they would want to appoint a commissioner to keep notes, and that already happens through the public meeting process. We keep very detailed notes and everything, so if someone wants to see what happens, they can follow that. But a request of the commission was also to keep a log of every public feedback we get. Like in an example we said was picking up dog poop at the dog park and then reporting it back to the commission, so it could go into a running work log, and that could be presented on our website or tracked somehow outside of the normal meeting minutes. And that just to, take a note down every 10 to 15 minutes of every time we get a phone call would put a burden on the department on recording that and reporting that to the commission.
Thank you, Mr. Eubank. Any questions, or Mr. Best, any questions? Clerk, please call the roll on whether we adopt.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I, of course, I was at the commission meeting but had time to think about it, and I really don't support work item number 2, so I'll be voting no on this vote because of that.
Further discussion? Yeah, like I said, I kind of read through this before I read the memo, and it sort of jumped out at me as I was going through it. And I appreciate them being proactive, no question about that. But I think this is something that as the memo states, is a bit of a redundancy, and it's something that it should be, I think, more squarely aligned with what administration does in support of the Parks and Rec Commission. So with that, I'll be I guess it would be a no vote to not include goal number 2. Is that correct? Okay. Further discussion? I just wanted to clarify that.
So no vote is to not include number 2. Okay.
Correct.
Now that I said it slower, it makes more sense.
I just wanted to clarify that it's not whatever this, but yeah, a no vote means that you were not for including goal 2 in their work plan. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Askin?
No.
Councilmember Dothit?
No.
Councilmember Sonart?
No.
Vice Mayor Nakstad?
No?
Councilmember Daniel?
No.
I'm
No.
sorry. Mayor Gabriel?
No.
Student Representative Tanner?
No.
You have 6 no votes. The City Council failed to approve Parks and Rec Commission 2024 Work Plan Objective Number 2.
Thank you. And so the rest of this motion and the divided question was to consider goals 1, 3, and 4 separately. Discussion on that motion? I just want to say I support these other goals and certainly appreciate the effort that the Parks and Recreation is putting. I think they're well thought out with a good course of action associated with each one of those. Vice Mayor Nakstad.
Having, been the liaison for a day, if you will, when they were discussing this, I was really impressed with how they pulled it all together and they debated it and discussed it, and it was a very good, very, very good meeting, actually. So I'm very happy with our parks folks.
Very good. Councilmember Haskin?
Can we request unanimous consent?
Unanimous consent was requested. Any objection to the motion, to the request? Discussion? Seeing no objection to unanimous consent, those goals 1 or objectives, I keep calling them goals, but I think objectives number 1, 3, and 4 are approved. That brings us to commission committee reports. First up, we have on Council on Aging. Yeah, sorry. Councilmember Bazin is not here. Airport Commission.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Sonart covered that for me.
Thank you. I was the liaison to the Airport Commission meeting last May 9th. They had a 5 p.m. workshop and a 6 p.m. meeting, and I was at both. During the workshop, it was actually their 3rd workshop working on their goals of their annual plan. And they worked on all 3 goals, and actually they worked on them several times, changed them, and I think went back to their original ones. So here's what they have. Goal number 1 is the construction of the taxiway Sierra. The strategy is we strongly support design and construction of taxiway Sierra remain in the FY 2027 capital improvement budget or move to an earlier FY CIP budget. Objective number 2, goal number 2, is the West Side Hangar subdivision. The Airport Commission will hold a work session to discuss the development of hangars on the west side. They will review the current lots and sizes that may be needed in the future. They will also review the possible use cases with the infrastructure that is in place now, as well as the infrastructure that will be built. They will review funding sources, the timeline when this is available, and make recommendations. Their 3rd objective is the airport terminal landscaping. The Airport Commission will seek and receive updates on the status of the terminal landscaping project. So those were their 3 goals, their objectives, and they fleshed those out during the workshop, and then during the meeting, they made them official. So that's it for that report. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sonart. Harbor Commission.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. Harbor Commission met on May 6th. They discussed and approved their 2024 work plan, and they also approved the purchase of the Salter property, and the next meeting is June 10th.
Thank you. Parks and Recreation Commission.
Mayor, I was out of state during that meeting, and I was not at that meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Dodd, did you attend that one, Councilmember Dodd?
Let's try. Yeah, that's right. I was at that one. Parks and Rec. My bad. I was reading over the planning and zoning one. You are correct. Give me just 1 second on that one. Trying to remember what all.
Do you want to go to planning and zoning first? And then come back?
Yeah, let's just.
Okay.
No, I can do that. I got the packet right. I just got to scroll down to a different packet now.
Okay, no worries.
And of course, now it won't load. Okay, Parks and Rec. So they approved the recommendation of the modifications that we've seen tonight. That was the biggest discussion. That was pretty much the only major discussion on their agenda was the approval of going over the different modifications on that one. And then that was pretty much the basis from what I remember on that one. It was just mostly, they went through the different versions of it and different modifications. There was a little confusion on exactly what we were doing, but then they ultimately agreed on it and passed it. Sorry, I'm losing my voice all of a sudden.
Very good, thank you. Planning and Zoning Commission?
Do beautification real quick, like? Oh, nope, he's ready. Never mind.
Too many. Actually, if you can go to the next one, because my thing is not loading for some
Yeah,
reason.
let's do beautification. And,
Yeah, hit beautification real quick.
All right, so
There it is.
beautification met last night for a work session and a regular meeting. The big discussions items were very similar, working through the work plan, which we'll see come up shortly, and recommending, as we did tonight, the approval of becoming a commission instead of a committee. So very exciting times. And the last thing that was on the agenda was picking out some colors for, I'll use Mr. Best's term, parkitecture, greens and browns. So lots of things happen in beautification. And the next meeting's in September sometime, I think.
Thank you. Planning and Zoning?
Okay, now the one I was more prepared. So, planning and zoning, they granted a conditional use permit for, it's going to be a two-phase building over on Redoubt. It's for 2 6-unit apartments. The first one is phase 1, and there'll be a phase 2. Similar to the other stuff that federal, the housing that's just up the street from it on Redoubt, where there's the long skinny apartment complexes. This is the land we donated last year, I believe. We authorized a donation for it. Now they're coming through with the plans on that. It sounds like they're going to be starting construction this summer on the first 6 units, and then there'll be a secondary 6 units literally in front of each other on that, which is all single level, so it confronts to the possibility of having some senior housing availability, which, as we know, is needed in this. It's not necessarily all going to be low income. There'll be some market rate housing involved in these, so I think it's going to hit a little bit of everything. It's all single story, handicap access. So there's, within the next couple of years, that's 12 units, right? So I think that's good. And then they also expressed some interest in possibly moving forward with more units in the future through this organization, and so it might be something to contact them for future ideas and building it up. Sounds like the projects that they have done look really nice. I think it's going to be a good project. Then there was some discussion on granting an encroachment for a shop to be within the encroachment boundary lines off of Bree Avenue in an RR zone. A gentleman wants to build a shop in kind of an oddly shaped lot, and to do that, he wants to be, I think it came down to within 3 feet. It started off around 6, and now he negotiated within 3. There was some negotiation and talk back and forth of what he actually was going to do, and ultimately, after some discussion, they did grant it within that 3-foot setback on that for that property on the encroachment permit for that shop. For the individual already has a house on that piece of property, and then they've got a pretty unusually shaped lot, and so where he wants to put a shop is going to have to be pretty close on one corner there. And then, so those are the 2 main things on that for the planning and zoning. Took a little bit of time on that encroachment one, but that's what they came to.
Thank you. So we've done beautification. On the report of the mayor, I just wanted to point out, we have a week from Monday is Memorial Day, and we'll have our Memorial Day ceremony here in Kenai at Leif Hansen Memorial Park, which earlier in the day they do the Avenue of Flags, but was just wondering if we could boost that on our website in conjunction with the American Legion. And with that, I'll go to administration reports. City Manager, Mr. Eubank.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's been an interesting couple of weeks. Maybe we've been just so engulfed with budget that a lot has been going on, but just some really unusual things popping up. I do have a couple things to report. So the city slash site will open tomorrow. So we're opening even earlier than last year. It'll continue likely till early October, end of September, early October, or until it gets full. But appreciate Parks and Rec and Streets working on getting that thing open for the public. We are in the process of conducting interviews for the fire chief position. We have 5 applicants we're interviewing right now. We did 1 earlier this week, 2 tomorrow, and 2 on Friday. Airport Operations Supervisor Jim Lackey is a 16-year employee with the city. His last day is May 30th. He's retiring. So there is going to be a retirement party for Mr. Lackey that day, and we'll get the information. Shelley, have you seen that information?
I did forward it to council.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We do have several openings still for some summer temporary positions in the PU Fishery and Parks and Rec. So if you know some kids that are, or even adults looking for some good summer employment, tell them check the city's website. The Storefront Streetscape Improvement Program, put out there by Planning and Zoning. Applications are due Friday, I believe, the 17th. And we'll have an update for council on how many applicants and things like that we got after that. Let's see. We've met with a couple of new groups. We met with Parker Feek and Smith, or Parker Smith and Feek, who is going to be the city's new health insurance broker. We met with them on 5/6. We also met with Agnew Beck, who's going to be take over the city's marketing on July 1. To get things headed in the right direction there. A really important meeting that took place on May 9th was the boroughs. We met with the consultants working and our planning director on the borough-wide comprehensive safety action plan. Really eye-opening kind of conversation, and just really for me highlights the need of the city's planning efforts in doing more planning in the future. But in the meantime, and the clerk did include in the laydown, the last page of the laydown is a little flyer on this. This is really critical. There's actually a community survey that's out there. I think it's through the 30th, Ms. Mitchell, through the 30th, where members of the public here in Kenai can go comment on different things related to transportation and safety corridors and things like that. And I think it would, the more people that can actually get their voice out there, the more things that will be included in the borough's work there. So really encourage people to get out there and take that. We are working with the borough right now. The borough's got some federal money to do some beetle kill mitigation, and they're would like to do some within the city of Kenai. They're focused on parcels that abut major roads and thoroughfares. With the, in case of a fire where these roads wouldn't be cut off. And we're working with them right now on some agreements and things, their plans to do that. We did get an invite from the Kenites Indian Tribe, and I don't know how to say this, but their cultural heritage interpretive site there in Cooper Landing, they're doing a re-grand opening on June 7th at 11 a.m. to 2:30. I don't know if council remembers that is the day that we also had noticed that we may be doing the ribbon cutting for the Bluff Erosion Project. So I need to get an update on that from the Corps, if that's still the plan, and see what the conflicts are, but we'll make sure council's aware before you plan which one you want to be able to go to. The airline leakage study we've been doing at the airport is nearing completion with a plan for the consultant to be here the second meeting in June to present to council. We'll also be inviting the airport commission to that council meeting to hear that presentation. So that'll be exciting. Working with the finance director and the city attorney, we have identified an error in the calculation of overtime rates that would impact about 4 city departments. So we're trying to determine the extent of that and what the costs are. So just wanted you to be aware about that in case you hear anything. And not lastly, the finance director is going to be sending out a memo. We've identified, I believe, 9 potential amendments or amendments to the budget that have come up in discussion. Basically what we're looking for is if there's interest from a council member. I don't know if sponsoring is the right term, but if there's genuine interest in bringing any of those amendments forward, then we will prepare the amendments and have them in the packet for the June 5th meeting, so just to make things go much more smoothly. If there's no interest, we won't work on those. It certainly doesn't preclude any council member from making any amendment that they'd want on June 5th, but we're just trying to be a little bit prepared. So you'll see an email coming out from the finance director on that. Lastly, this one it really caught me off guard. I think this happened last Thursday, May 9th. Senate Finance Committee, I'm trying to be respectful here. They added to House Bill 347 a provision that would increase the mandatory senior citizen disabled veteran tax exemption on real property by municipalities from, right now it's 150,000. We're going to increase it to 450,000, which I think it absolutely, as with anything, it warrants discussion. But to do it literally in the last week of the session with no notice to local municipalities, I mean, just to give council a little bit of perspective, the 150,000, and these are 2022 tax numbers. I don't have anything more current. 2022 tax numbers, the $150,000 mandatory exemption reduces city revenue by almost $350,000. The borough has an additional $150K exemption, an optional one. In the city of Kenai, that would require, just to move to $300,000, not $450,000, would reduce city revenues by an additional $170,000. And
They were looking at 450?
They were looking at 450. And obviously that number shrinks as you get higher because fewer homes are worth $450,000, but these are significant numbers, and I really struggle. I did reach out to both Senator Bjorkman and Representative Ruffridge, and I hope that they had the same concern we did, and that it really needed to be vetted and talked about more thoroughly, rather than just throw something out there to the wind. So. Like I said, it's been an interesting couple of weeks. It's actually kind of refreshing to have some new and different topics out there, but I'm happy to answer your questions.
Any questions of the city manager? Seeing none, we'll go to city attorney, Mr. Bloom.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel and members of council. I don't have anything to report at this time, but I will report on my traffic citation and trial statistics at the next meeting.
Thank you. Questions of the city attorney? Seeing none, we'll go to the city clerk, Ms. Sainer.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I have nothing to report this evening. Available for questions.
Thank you. Any questions of the city clerk? Councilmember Askin.
I was wondering, when are you planning to start the headstone photo taking again?
The devices are available for checkout anytime you want.
Any other questions of the city clerk? Seeing none, we'll go to additional public comment. Is there anybody from the general public like to address the council at this time? Seeing nobody here in chambers or online, we'll go to council comments. Councilmember Douthat.
Yeah, I just would like to say that, the Comprehensive Safety Action Plan, I was invited to be on and participate on that, and I'm excited it's going to hopefully come up some really good ideas, and hopefully it'll encourage some of the key areas in Kenai that we have a lot of problems with to either be made safer, or I know there's some plans for them to already be made safe, and hopefully it expedites these certain areas. Also, I went to the borough, had their land sale auction, outcry auction this Saturday. There were quite a few parcels throughout the borough, several in the city of Kenai. I was able to successfully purchase a couple more, so I was glad to have that. The adjoining properties to my existing property, so that was nice. One of the interesting things, and this kind of comes down to tax revenue, and I was talking with the borough mayor when we were there, is in that auction, all the properties were listed at pretty much double the borough assessed values. And I stayed there for about 3/4 of the auction, and all the properties, I'd say 90 some odd % of them sold for considerably more than the asking minimum price. So it was pretty interesting, to see when you're looking at your tax bases, when properties, now the borough has information that, when they list them for twice the borough assessed value and they continually sell higher than that even, it was pretty interesting to see how the borough assessment values really are, especially with bare land around here. It really reiterated that, they are pretty low considering what the market seems to reiterate. So that was kind of interesting, and I anticipate to see some data come out for the borough to be able to utilize that in the near future for being able to justify their current assessment values. That's pretty much the excitement. Oh, we did continually, I think I sent the city manager an interesting clip. We did continue at the chamber to clean out the Moose Meat John cabin and started going through some of the old files and stuff. And we have started to find some really interesting articles and some really neat history of the different areas. Oh, bummer, Sam's not here. We found, I don't know, did Sam get a hold of the mayor about we found an interesting letter from the mayor when you were very, very young, and we kept it. So I'll have to have Sam bring it the next meeting. She was supposed to be here to bring it to this meeting, but she must have gotten caught up. But it was from your, I think, middle school, high school age group when you were requesting some information. It was pretty interesting. I was like, I recognize that name. So there's all kinds of fun tidbits and history throughout there. So as we start to go through that, I think it's going to be pretty interesting to see the articles clear back from the 60s and 50s, and a lot of really neat old material that was just stored and archived that we haven't seen in years. So as we continue to clean that out, I think it's going to be a neat addition to the cultural center over there. So I'll keep everybody posted on that too.
You got my attention. Curious about that. Student Representative Tanner.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. So there's a small report because it's close to the end of the school year. But for Connections, May 16th, tomorrow is graduation at 4 p.m. at Soldotna High School Auditorium. There are 130 graduating students and 67 will be walking at the ceremony tomorrow. As far as plans for the summer go, there's only one. Connections will be part of a Kids Day at the Wednesday Market on June 19th, and they plan to hold a kids activity. They're currently making appointments for re-enrollments and will have some staff in and out of office after school ends. Kenai Alternative High School, the 16th, tomorrow is the last day for their students. For Kenai Central High School, the 16th, tomorrow is also the last day for Kenai Central High School students, and there will be softball games at Palmer and baseball at Houston High School. On May 17th through 18th, Kenai Central High School will be hosting the Boys and Girls Peninsula Soccer Regional Tournaments. And on the 17th, there will be softball varsity games at Houston High School and junior varsity and varsity softball at Reddington High School on the 18th. There will be baseball, junior varsity, and varsity at Reddington on May 17th through 18th, and the track regional competition is at Homer High School on May 17th. There are a few state championships coming up. With the soccer state championships from May 23rd through May 25th at Colony, Palmer, and Wasilla High Schools. Track and field state championships from May 24th through 25th at Diamond High School. The softball state championships from May 30th through June 1st at South Davis Complex in Fairbanks. And the baseball state championships from May 30th through June 1st at Wasilla High School and Mulcahy Stadium, depending on the division. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Tanner. Councilmember Soner.
Thank you, Mayor Gabriel. I'm looking forward to the, I guess you call it the opening ceremonies for the Bluff Stabilization Program. Mr. Eubank, is that tentatively scheduled for June 7th?
Mr. Eubank. or scum, 11th.
June 11th,
June
I
11th.
believe. So I messed that up.
Do we have a time, an approximate time, or?
Mr. Kurt?
Thank you. So I don't have an exact time. It's going to be in the morning. And I'm kind of at the Corps' mercy, and I'm not sure what time the commander and colonels are going to be here, but I do know it's the 11th, and I do know it's in the morning.
I guess, yeah, if we could, when we get that dialed in, if we could send out a notice to the council on exactly date, time, and place, I guess.
Thank you.
We're gonna break out the big scissors, hopefully. Very good. Councilman Raskin.
I don't have anything, thanks.
Councilman Daniel.
Well, our student representative stole my thunder, but I'm glad she did. School is over for most schools tomorrow. Looking forward to doing the end of school barbecue, cooking some hot dogs for the kids at Mountain View. It's always a good time. They always try to swindle you out of something like 2 hot dogs or extra drinks or whatever. I always love that. But looking forward to it, seeing all their smiling faces and ready for summer.
Vice Mayor next.
Thank you, Mayor. I want to thank Councilmember Sonart for covering for me at the airport meeting. Kind of did double duty with the work session, too. Much appreciated. And I'd like to also emphasize what the city manager said about the budget. If you do have any amendments, it's really not a good thing just to come without having it kind of set up, because there's just so many working parts. The meeting will go on forever, and we might have to come back. So, please, get it to administration or talk with them about it. That's all I have.
Yeah, if those can be included in the packet for that June 5th meeting, that would be much appreciated. Very good. Well, seeing we don't have any executive session or pending items before us this evening, seeing no other business before this body, we are adjourned. Do you see what I did there?